We were told we had 5 people and 4 passports, and we said, no, we're all on passports. But then Sandra realised she got her passport renewed and Ross wasn't renewed with it. So he and I had to stay back, and the travel agents were great. They organised seats for us later on that night. So Ross and I came home, and we played PlayStation for about an hour and a half actually in here in his room, and went into town eventually that morning into the Department of Foreign Affairs and got his passport, which you could do then. And we went back to the airport, and when we were there we did a bit of shopping and bought 2 of these crosses, and he had one and I had one. We called them our bonding crosses. And Ross and I wore these, and we got back later on that night. We had a great day, just a real guys bonding day. And the girls were quite emotional when we arrived in Spain, but we thought it was great fun. So.
That's a small man, but it looked quite small, but there's no problem bringing it back.
Thanks. I was going to say it's too big, if anything.
No, I think you're right. Not that
No,
bad.
that is nice. I like that.
I knew you'd like that.
I need another brown t-shirt in it.
Okay, next.
Oh my god, look at that.
I'll be around, I'll be loving you always. Always. Here I am and I'll take my time. Here I am and I wait in line always. Always.
The one thing that I'm finding most difficult about moving to London is leaving mum and dad, and it's funny because, you know, everybody has to vacate the nest, so to speak, at some stage in their life. And the last time I moved to England, the hardest thing for me was leaving Ross, because we were so inseparable. It was the hardest thing. It's going to be very difficult leaving mum and dad, who are going from a house of 4 people now to a house of 2. I worry that when I actually do go, that's when the front will go down and they won't be putting up a front anymore, and I'm sure they'll be okay.
Ross Nugent was born on the 17th of July 1991 and died on the 15th of May 2010. During this short life, he touched and inspired many people, and the Ross Nugent Foundation was set up in July 2010 in his honour.
Ross was the love of my life. He was the most placid, easygoing, artistic, fun person to be around. He had a huge amount of friends. Everybody kind of gravitated towards him. He never liked being the centre of attention, but yet he seemed to be, he was very popular, loved music. The Bose speakers would be blasting 24/7. It's probably one of the things I miss most, the house was quiet without him.
It's unusual that, you know, a boy and a girl are so close, but never fought, not once ever fought. I don't remember an argument in the 18 years he was alive, and like we'd be excited to go on holidays together because, you know, it'd be like going away with your friends. Like literally, I wanted to be so like him. Like think of every positive quality that somebody could have, and that was Ross.
In a crowded room, he didn't want to be the centre of attention, but when he had to turn on the acting, he could do it. And there were things that came very naturally to him, and I think it was just part of Ross's nature just to make people laugh. It's what he did best. And that's what Ross did. A lot of his time, he just kept himself busy doing things with others. He loved his friends, he loved his family, he loved being with people, he loved making people laugh. And Ross's passions were music, song, dance. He was big into hip-hop. And in fact, it was in this room that he was practicing his hip-hop one day and hit his back off the side of the sofa there, and that was the beginning of that was like it triggered something in his back, and that was the beginning of the back pain that we then, after which we then took him to the doctor.
On the 5th of January 2010, after months of misdiagnosis, pain and discomfort, Ross was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called Ewing's sarcoma.
Ewing's sarcoma, it can occur anywhere in the body, but it generally affects the bones and soft tissue. The symptoms can be so vague that it takes a long time to get diagnosed. Generally, it can be pain at where the tumour site is, or there can be a swelling or redness and tenderness at the site. But oftentimes it's diagnosed kind of incidentally when a young person has a minor accident, like a knock against a chair or a fall or something, and they break a limb, and then in turn sent for x-rays, and it's diagnosed on x-ray, MRIs and CT scans. And the treatment of it is intensive radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and it's quite intensive regime.
Ewing sarcoma, none of us had heard of it, unfortunately. Ross was diagnosed on the 5th of January with this illness. He had a lot of pain in his lower back. We had a lot of procedures with physiotherapy, assuming we were doing the right thing. We took it into our own hands then to get another opinion, and finally we discovered that Ross had this insidious illness.
I knew that they were having all these tests at this particular time in January, and I got a phone call the night before and they said that it was Ewing sarcoma, and that meant nothing to me. I didn't know what it was, but of course I wanted to find out, so I got off the phone and I immediately went onto the internet and researched it, and the first line was a malignant tumour in the bone tissue.
It is so sneaky, it just creeps upon, and Ross had so many procedures, lumbar punctures, CT scans, MRI scans, and it still kept showing clear, even though clearly it wasn't. Ross lost 2 stone, he lost a lot of weight and in a lot of pain. So they decided then to do chemotherapy, and that did help. It did help initially.
The next morning they had a meeting with the consultant, and he said it was cancer. And then they rang me and told me, and I dropped everything. I dropped my whole life over in England. Unfortunately, that was when the snow had hit Dublin, so it took me 17 hours to get home. I went to the airport, flight was cancelled, and there was putting us onto another flight that mightn't have even gone out, so I drove 4 hours to get to Holyhead and got the ferry over. So 17 hours later I was by his bedside and pretty much didn't leave it since then.
When Ross was first diagnosed, the first thing he said to me is, "Mum, am I going to die?" And I said, "No, Ross, you're in the best of places. You've got the best of care, you've got wonderful consultants, we'll get through this." And Ross, being Ross, just said, "Right, I'm going to beat this," and became very strong within himself and adopted a new approach and really believed that he was going to survive this and that he was going to go around schools and lecture teenagers with cancer.
You know, everyone who looked after him warmed to him and was touched by him. He was just full of life, as I suppose a lot of 18-year-olds, you know, he was full of life, full of enthusiasm for everything. He was, you know, in his room he had photographs up all over the place of all different places they'd been on holidays, and he was usually hanging out of something or someone and a crowd of people around him. You know, he just really touched people who looked after him.
When he was having the treatment and when he was having the chemotherapy, initially he was strong, but gradually he got this eye infection called cellulitis halfway through. He was to have a hat party, a halfway party, and everybody had to wear a hat. And he woke up that morning and he just had this redness around his eye, and I said, "Rossi, I'm not happy with this pet." So he pleaded with me not to bring him back to the doctor again because he felt he was doing well, gained the weight. Took him to the doctor and they said, "Yes, cellulitis." So I had to cancel the party, bring him back in, and his spirit, I noticed from then on in, was going down.
Despite the excellent treatment and care he received, Ross died surrounded by his family on the morning of the 15th of May 2010.
Well, I suppose for them it was such a hard thing to take on board that, you know, their 18-year-old son or brother was diagnosed with this illness. Unfortunately for us, you know, after going through all of this treatment, it didn't work. Nobody expects or believes that somebody so young is going to get something like Ewing sarcoma.
Ross was having his blood pressure taken one day in St. Clair's ward, regular routine test, and while this is a very modern oncology wing, some of the basic stuff just wasn't great, and having his blood pressure taken, the cuff kept falling off his arm, and Ross turned to his mum and he said, "Mum, when I get out of here," he said, "I'm going to raise money to buy a blood pressure monitor for St. Clair's because it's not fair on the other patients."
So I said, "If you do that, Rossi, I'm going to pimp it up with Ed Hardy," because he adored Ed Hardy. And I just remember him saying to me, "Mum, if you do that, you'll be a ledge."
Unfortunately, Ross never got that opportunity, and we felt we owed it to him at least to set up the Ross Nugent Foundation. And the objectives are very fundamental to buy raise funds to buy equipment for St. Clair's Oncology Ward in Beaumont and other oncology wards in other hospitals.
A year old now, the foundation has raised thousands of euro to buy numerous pieces of equipment and make conditions more comfortable for the patients, visiting relations and nursing staff of St. Clair's ward. Ross's family and friends have come together through the foundation to organise numerous events and fundraisers that not only raise money but also help his loved ones to remember him and raise awareness of the disease.
I find putting my energy into an event, when I'm feeling low especially, I find that it just lifts me up a little bit because it brings me a little bit closer to Ross and a little bit closer to the promise that he made to my mum. So I do get a lot of strength from it, I really do. It keeps me strong in days that I do find difficult.
For me and for my wife Sandra and my daughter Emma, having the foundation it allows us to do a number of things, including delivering on Ross's promise, but also it helps us to keep our mind focused on something positive. And there isn't a lot that's positive in this nightmare experience that we've been through and that we're going through. But if by doing this it helps us to focus on delivering something positive for others in the hospital, it helps to keep us in contact with his friends and family of his friends, well then that's a positive thing. Some other pieces of Ross's art have now been put onto onto some T-shirts, and they include drawings he did of people like Tupac and will.i.am. We have now set up the Ross Nugent Foundation as a registered charity. We have our CHY number from the revenue. The objectives are very fundamental, as I mentioned, to raise funds to buy equipment to make life more comfortable for the patients and for the relations who, like we did, stay overnight, and also for the nursing staff, but also to raise awareness of Ewing sarcoma, a little known disease, but one that we would want no one to experience in any shape or form. In terms of the future of the foundation, as long as people want to be supportive and feel that they would like to contribute, then who are we to say no and to stop? So we will continue to put our energy into this foundation to deliver on this promise.
As long as people are wanting to give, we'll continue on doing it. Don gets a lot of strength out of it. Emma does too. I do, but sometimes I just find it a bit hard.
To donate, please visit www.rossnugentfoundation.ie or contact info@rossnugentfoundation.ie. Help us to fulfil Ross's promise.